Janus, or Janus, the Roman god of thresholds, beginnings, and endings, has had many depictions over the centuries. Common to them all and distinguishing him from every other occupant in the Roman pantheon were his two faces opposite each other on either side of his head. He looked both ways with his two faces, and this, the Romans thought, made him the perfect god to preside over the boundary between any two given situations, war and peace, earth and heaven, past and future, like, say, at the New Year. He was the doorkeeper, the boundary master. One conspicuous difference you'll notice among Janus's many depictions is that in some, his two faces are identical and his head a perfectly symmetrical mirror image, while in others, his two faces are markedly different, one side bearded while the other side is not, or one side visibly aged while the other side is youthful. As symbolic of the difference between the past, the domain of the old and the aged, and the future, belonging to the young, these differing faces of Janus seem pretty apt. I wonder, though, of these two faces of the god, old and young, how apt they are for representing the past and the future like that, as in the imagination of men, the past may be remembered as the golden years of youth, more in line with the younger face, and the future dreaded as a dark and fearful unknown of old age, appropriate for the older face. So which face really best represents past or future? And are the depictions of Janus where his two faces are identical just a jaded way of acknowledging that from past to future nothing really ever changes? There's nothing new under the sun, right? These are just guesses, honestly. But regardless of whether Janus's two faces are identical or different, he has a peculiar problem. Standing at the threshold and looking behind and before, he can't actually look at the threshold itself. Gazing simultaneously at the past and the future, he can't attend to the present. His experience, then, is entirely inverse to ours, whose experience is only ever of the present. We're bound to the here and now, at least for here and now, as part of our nature. Janus then represents our desire to transcend this limitation, to have a real insight and vision into the past and the future. But the limitations of our imaginations, which imperfectly remember the past and imperfectly picture the future, have also produced a limited and imperfect God to symbolize and represent this sort of vision that we wish we had. This wish fulfillment character can't even interface with us in the now, as he stands to preside over those great moments of change that accentuate our lives, births, deaths, New Year's. He is, then, the perfect embodiment of the folly of not attending to the present day and moment, of worrying about tomorrow or brooding on the past. His unnatural deformation of having two faces on one head, of possessing some kind of bizarre double perception that we could never identify with, and of never being able to identify with our perception, means that Janus really represents the unnaturalness of the passions or obsessions that drive us to place inordinate hope in the future, or to foster some inordinate longing for the past, or to despair of there ever being any possibility for a change for the good, or to waste our time prognosticating about what will happen tomorrow or next year. There is, however, another God who possesses the ability to behold both past and future, not by standing on the threshold between them and being forced to amalgamate two different perspectives looking in either direction, but rather by standing outside of time altogether and beholding all of time in its entirety. He presides not only over thresholds, though he can always be found there, but over the whole journey, preparation to destination. This transcendent God became incarnate as a human being, able to identify with us. And because he has one face, we can interface with him and he with us in our present moment, in the now, as he comforts us for what we've lost and left behind in the past, and for what we fear or hope for in the future. He hears our prayers at every threshold and every moment. He heard them from the foundation of the world. And in the world to come, our prayers yesterday and today and tomorrow are even still in his ears. This is the God who both stands in the now and yet perceives all of time. Janus will dissolve and fade away when we finally cross that final threshold, that threshold which heals us of our unnatural desire to perceive and act beyond our nature. And, possibly, the creature called time will itself be transformed along with us. But for now, in the now, we can turn our anxieties about the past and the future over to the God who reigns over both and meets us, as one of us, where we are.